Tom here. Welcome to the Farmer Tomcast. Today on our ongoing series, Heroes of the Green, we've got Normal Bean. How's it going, Normal?
Hey, doing well. Nice to see you, Tom.
Good to see you too, buddy. Well, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and the world wants to hear you and your story.
So I'd like to say thanks for having me here today. And Farmer Tom has been my friend for a long time, and I really respect his work. And it's always nice to see his pictures and my pictures. And during growing season, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a brother out there. So he's asked me to start from the beginning and tell you my weed trip. And so we'll go way back because I'm getting older now. But I'm not from the beginning. There was many before me. But I do have a certain story. I grew up in a little house with hippies. At 2 years old, I've been kidnapped and taken up to this house where I lived with these hippies. And in this house, there was just really, no adult supervision or any kind of thing like that. And they all smoked weed. They did whatever. So I was like, Mikey, hey, let him try it. So, and Mikey liked it. Oh, yeah. So I was smoking weed from as a little bitty guy, grew up doing it. And I remember at that time, my brother was dealing weed. So he was like bringing it to me and going, hey, here's Colombian Gold and here's Michoacan, and here's that. So I got to smoke these great killer strains the whole time. So I really feel like I was lucky. I got right there in the 70s in that time to hit just the perfect thing. Had an older brother, brought me through that. We would go to shows there at that time, and the entire movie outdoor drive-in theater was shut down. It was like a drive-in, and people would walk around, and it was a big giant hippie fest. And so that was our first exposure to seeing like pre-concerts and what it would actually be. And it wasn't until later I started hitting the rock and roll concerts, and it kind of all evolved together. But so I then later on, I ended up down in the Ozarks, down in southern Missouri, and been through foster care and stuff, and ended up with this family out on this farm. Well, I had stopped smoking, just going to school, being a straight kid, doing everything. And I was a good student, good kid. I was playing tuba in the band, and all the band teachers had adopted me, and they literally raised me. And I'm still connected with my band teachers to this day, Mr. Lanning. It's awesome, But then in stage band, I played guitar. So, me being a good hillbilly kid there, I just started growing pot like the other kids did there and some of the old timers there. So I got exposed to a lot of old hillbilly lore, you would put it, as far as growing weed. And the thing about it in the Ozarks, it's a natural place that in the United States, there's only a few areas to get the exact light, have the right nutrients, and it's optimal for the plant to just grow naturally. You don't do anything to it. It just takes off. It's like a tree there. It's native. It has the right rocks in the soil and the right ash burn off into it. The dew waters it every morning. It gets the right light. There's areas in Humboldt here, and there's a belt that travels up to West Virginia. And in that area is the optimal light, band that cannabis really thrives in. So it's like weed. I pulled them up, dropped them on the ground. They just got right back up and sprouted again. So the stuff is hardy there. Well, I graduated and took off and went into the military and did a little stint there as an airborne ranger. And I got out of that. And then the first thing I did was go right back to the Ozarks at this time, and went out and started growing weed. And it kind of helped me rebalance myself back to, society and get over a lot of the PTSD, and just it grounded me, gave me a whole complete sense. Because I at that point, I started getting into the spirituality of the plant itself. At one point, I realized I had grown so much weed that the plant had identified me and knew me as its gardener, as its caretaker. The plants would actually literally talk to me in subtle ways. It would tell me when things, because I was doing guerrilla farming. It would tell me when people had been in the farm or were nearby, the leaves would turn a certain way. It's amazing if you become in tune with it, the colors will change. They'll tell me where. I imagine that Indian lore long ago, this was natural common knowledge that most of the Indian people actually knew. But, many years later, here we are, semi-ancestors and the what's left. This is what we see. So that knowledge is lost. Some of us stumble on it. And I believe I did stumble on it there. So at this point in time, I was a pretty crazy ranger, so I'm the best guerrilla farmer you've ever seen in your entire life. Okay. I am at this point, I'm in the 4-state area. I'm growing more weed than any person anywhere at this time. At this point, you probably smoked my weed, in the 80s at that point, because I was, and it was full on. I would track the authorities, leave them spots to follow. I tracked to the point where I would go to the McDonald's with them during that day and sit next to them and listen to them so I could figure out where they're going to track them right back into the woods. I had plants out there so the deer could eat, so the pot thieves could eat, so the police could find theirs. And there was still plenty of weed everywhere. I couldn't harvest it all. So it was just part of the replenishing. Were we trying to sell it? No. We were just growing it, smoking it, and it was just a freedom fighter thing because every hillbilly in the wood at this time smoked weed. So it was a different kind of place. It wasn't till later on in the days of then the meth problem kind of hit, and then the police hit, and everybody stopped growing at that time. So I stopped growing, and I at that point thought, okay, well, we can't grow anymore. It's too dangerous on that, and it's just a shame. It's wrong. They're killing this natural spirit thing that should be real. And I'd heard a lot of medical, and I'd known a lot of people because I'm a musician at this time. I'd been evolving and playing rock and roll all over, and got hooked up, did some shows with CCR and Three Dog Night, and got lucky, and yada yada yada, and started playing all over. So in that network, I found my way on the West Coast, and on the West Coast, I ended up hooking up indirectly with the people that run the Emerald Empire Hempfest. And they're like, Normal, we really need you to come in and help us with the stage and put the sound together and get the shows together, and because this is what we're trying to do. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a marijuana activist, sure. I grew my share of pot, and I've smoked weed, and I'm behind it 100%. It's the musician's rights, At this time, I've got a TV show that's counterculture. It's one of the first reality TV shows on Channel 29, and we're smoking weed. That's what we're doing. The camera just follows us around. We're showing the real deal. So it just kind of evolves from there. I start running the stage, and then who comes next to me? It's Jack Herrera, Larry Bonner, Dank, and just countless others that I end up meeting. And we all start having meetings, and it comes to be a core, and I end up utilizing a lot of my specialties, from military background, organization to rock and roll, being a musician and that type of thing, just to start organizing it. And we all start pushing, and it's where I got my testimony, and I'll tell you the story. I got my testimony from Larry Bonner. Now, Larry Bonner was a guy I met through Jack Herrera, and Jack was old and Larry was older. Okay, Larry wore this boiler hat and had this cane, and he would walk up the stage in this cane, and he introduced himself to me, and he made it from that point forward to be present in every meeting, in every organization, at everything, to be the center of all attention and to make sure all authority and the right info got out. He was a powerhouse, you know. He had been Michigan marijuana. He was worked, got connected through Bob Seger's road manager. That, you know, a whole bunch of hats at one time. Bikers loved him, and, you know, just an all-around gentle, nice guy. Well, he got diagnosed with cancer, and the doctor told him, he said, "This is the worst cancer I've ever seen, and most any patient, you're not going to be around. You got maybe a month or two. Nice knowing you, Larry." And everyone decided, okay, well, wow, I can throw Larry Bonner's last party. Well, Jack, he had this stuff, and no one really knew what it was at this time. And he said, here, Larry, try this. And so Larry started taking this stuff. Now, it was Phoenix Tears, RSO. And we started planning Larry Bonner's last party. And, you know, so like 10 years later, we're still throwing Larry Bonner's last party because Larry was still alive at that time. Just beat everything. All cards hand down. And Jack, all of us looked at him as going, wow, this is proof right here. This guy right here, look at him. And it was like 180-degree turnaround. He got youthful, was doing really well. Like I said, he'd show up at the meeting, be the slave driver. And I love him to death. Well, I was out on tour down in California one year and doing my route because I'd done the High Times thing, the thing after the Wee Fest went down in Oregon. Stephen Hager got a hold of us, and me and him went down and did the Wee Fest down in Northern California, and it was a big success and a few other things. Well, at this time, I had pioneered and got Sacramento Hempfest going, and so I just basically was working with different groups to push the envelope on the Hempfest movements. We got Montana going and various, you know, North Carolina, Georgia, New York, and Florida, and what we found is people were calling us up here back in Oregon because basically we wrote the blueprint of how Hempfest goes and how things work, and because we ran a non-tolerant, meant there was no drugs there, completely free event for 30 some years. It became the ground zero, where everything and all the activists streamed from there, and everything went from there, and it went to Seattle, it went to wherever it was going, but that was ground zero. The fight was fierce there at that point. The pushback was great. I can go into many stories of false stories that were printed and put out that talked about all kinds of calamities and the things that happened that didn't even happen, that were false info to try to get people to not participate in Hempfests. So people really have no idea. I myself went in and had battles with county after county after county through California. I would pay their fees to do the event and start the organization of it, and then the battle would ensue. They were either for it or against it. Many cities that we would go into, they would talk, they were just crazy. I went in Ronan, Montana, and they had 2 mobile jails set up outside the thing and fences all around, and they were waiting on us and just freaked out. And I go in there, and of course I got a dressing room. It's right on Main Street. I go in there, and Heather's there, and I leave, and all the management, everything comes in. So they all sit down at the table, and the city police and everything. And they hand out this triage pamphlet. That's how they're going to deal with us hippies and us pots, people, hooligans here, and So then they point out the police that they're going to have on me and how they're going to do it. So she just walked out the door and handed me the manual and pointed out the undercovers, which I sent my people instantly to tell them, come on over here to the soundboard. They're going to hang out with me the rest of the night. Well, this is going to be fun. So I got them all out there, got the cameras up there, and started streaming out down to channel 29. And I got up on top of the stage and I started talking to the public. And I said, what do you people do in Montana? And no one wanted to say anything because it was really oppressive. On one side, you had all these police with like jack boots and their whole shield thing and billy clubs, and it was crazy. And this one little Indian gal started dancing around, and they kind of would like trying to muscle in on her. And I started yelling out, what do you people like to do in here in Montana? Do you like to smoke weed? And everyone's like, it's like a pin could drop out there. And I'm like, does anybody smoke marijuana here? Like that. People are starting to hoop and holler. And then I go, well, here's the cameras behind here, right here. And there's 90,000 people watching you right now. And this is about medical marijuana rights. And welcome to the party. And the police, people just kind of parted like the Red Sea of Moses. And the party started. And we had this AC/DC thing going on there, and then great show, light show. Well, they kept trying to disrupt it because they kept letting off the giant siren alarms, like the tornado warning things, like every 20 minutes, which was ridiculous. But after about a couple hours, they quit. The party kind of started changing over. Well, at the end of the party, I'm on the stage and I'm looking down and I see the chief of police and the mayor and one dignitary after another standing on there. And I think, well, I'm going to jail here, so I'll see you all later. And I walked down there, and the guy stuck out his hand and shook my hand. And he said, Normal Bean, that was like nothing. We did not expect that. That was awesome. And he goes, you guys are welcome in our town anytime. And so that was